Okay, everybody, welcome. B'Shem Hashem Na'aseh v'Natzliach. Be'ezrat Hashem, tonight we are going to continue in the laws of Shabbat, studying the Lametet Melachot. Thank you all for joining us. If it's cold, let me know. I'll shut off the AC. It's a little bit chilly over there. You might, maybe you want to relocate because it's a little bit cold. It's just up to you. Okay. Okay. We could also move these so I could see everybody. Sorry. There we go. Okay. Okay, perfect. So tonight, B'ezrat Hashem, we're continuing in the laws of Shabbat. We're learning for the, I'd like to learn the Nishmat Imhuna Rivka Bat Zilpa. That tonight is her Shloshim. Okay, let's go. If anyone has any names or Refuah Shlema before we start. Refuah Shlema Moshe Ben Chana. Anybody else? We're good. Everyone should have Refuah Shlema B'toch Shar Chodei Yisrael. Amen. Okay. Tonight we will be continuing in the laws of Shabbat. Melechet Kotev. New Melacha we're learning tonight is the Melacha called Kotev, writing. Writing is one of the 39 Melachot, and this was done on the beams of the Mishkan. As we mentioned in the past, the beams of the Mishkan had to be placed exactly in the same place that they were originally. So as you know, in the 40 years in the desert, the Mishkan was put together and taken apart. Put together, taken apart. As we will read in this week's parasha, Mas'eh, we had many different times that we traveled in the desert. And every time that they traveled and they moved from one place to the other, they had to take apart the Mishkan and put it back together. Take it apart, put it back together. Now, it was very important to make sure that the beams that were close to the Kodesh HaKodashim stayed close to the Kodesh HaKodashim. The beams that were close to the menorah stayed close to the menorah. The beams that were close to the shulchan stayed close to the shulchan, because each vessel had a certain level of sanctity, and each area had a certain level of kedusha, some more than the others and some less than the others. So the problem is that if you take something on such a high level of kedusha and you then lower it to a different level, that's considered a great disrespect. So if you take a beam, for example, that was placed originally by the Aron HaKodesh, and then you move it next time all the way to the front of the Mishkan, that's a much lower level of sanctity. So therefore, they had to mark each beam with a letter to know exactly where it's supposed to go when they build it back again and put it back together. Clear? So that's where the Melacha of writing comes in the Mishkan, and therefore, the Melacha of writing on Shabbat only is on a Torah level if you write two letters, because only once you write on two separate beams do you show, okay, this one comes first and that one comes second, right? That's Aleph, that's Bet, and that has a meaning to it, right? You know that this is the first one, this is the second one, but just to have one by itself, you haven't really showed much, right? So therefore, two letters is required midoraita. That's number one. Number two, you also need, in order for the writing to be considered a Torah level writing, it has to be an everlasting writing. Ktav hamitkayem, right? It has to be a ktav, a writing that lasts. Okay? Condition number two, if you have a kind of writing which does not last, according to the strict letter of the law, that is not prohibited on Shabbat. So the rabbis made it forbidden, but midoraita, it is permissible. Again, remember, why is it always so important to know what's prohibited on a Torah level versus what's prohibited only rabbinically? Because if it's only prohibited rabbinically, so then there are going to be certain times where we could be lenient, right? Depending on different situations. So it's important to get down clear from the beginning what is prohibited midoraita and what is prohibited midrabanan, right? Good? Clear? Okay. There's one more very interesting point to make before we start. There's one opinion, which actually seems to be corroborated by many others as well, and that is the opinion of the Or Zarua, who held that in order for it to be a violation midoraita, it has to be in Hebrew. Technically, in his opinion, writing in English or any other language besides for Hebrew is not a Torah violation, which is a unique opinion. Obviously, we don't hold like that. We hold that you're not allowed to write at all in any language, and we usually take the view that it would be doraita even in English or any other language as well. But we will use his opinion occasionally to add it to a couple of other reasons that we might be lenient. So it's important to be aware of that as well. Okay. So what's an example of writing? Obviously, writing itself is obviously forbidden. But even if you simply create a picture, take a pen or a pencil, you make a picture, an image, that's also considered to be writing on Shabbat. So even though you didn't necessarily make a word, but you made an image, you drew a picture of something, and it's not with any particular color, so it's not sovea, coloring, but it's writing with a pencil, that's considered to be writing as well. Okay.
So writing with a pencil is considered a erase also?
Yeah, because it lasts.
You could erase it though.
But you're not. You mean to keep it.
Like the kavana is not to erase.
Yeah.
Wow.
Right?
What about like those things that are like that children have that you can like write
Those magnet things?
Yeah,
That's
like
a good question.
you write things
Yeah.
and then you erase them.
It's a really good question.
I was just
Let's think about that
I
as we
wouldn't
go along.
use it, but I'm just wondering like
That's a great question. Let's think about that as we go along. Good question. I didn't write it down in my notes, but it's a great question. Let's think about it. Okay. So let's talk about the halachot that come up explicitly in Shulchan Aruch. No writing on top of writing. Let's say you already have something written down. Do not write on top of it. That is forbidden if you are making the letters more clear. Let's say you're making it stronger. Even if you're not, you still are not allowed to do that, at the very least rabbinically. If, let's say, you're changing it to a different color, let's say it was red and now you're putting black on top of it, that would be considered erasing also because you're getting rid of the color. Okay. That's number one. Clear? Okay. Number two, even one letter potentially could be considered writing on a Torah level, and that is if the letter that you write fixes something like a Sefer Torah, or if, let's say, you fix something like a mezuzah, the last letter of the mezuzah is missing, and you put it in. You just went ahead and you filled in the mezuzah, right? So even though it's one letter, but it fixed the whole mezuzah, it fixed the whole Sefer Torah, that would be considered a Torah violation.
What if somebody, like a rabbi, is in a synagogue and it's on Shabbat and they see that in the Sefer Torah, there's a letter that makes it not kosher or whatever, and they say it has to be fixed. Is that muksa?
No, you put the Torah away and then you take out a different Torah.
But I'm saying like, because you know how you said you're not allowed to talk about muksa?
Yeah,
on
well, I mean,
Shabbat?
over here, we're just trying to make sure that we could use it, and it turns out we can't use it. Sadly, what can you do?
Mhm.
Right?
But
Okay.
to say you have to fix it, is that muksa or not?
It's for a mitzvah, so it's not that bad. For the sake of a mitzvah. Yeah. Okay. No, I'm saying there's a rule like that.
Because it's
Talking
hard
about
not to talk about muksa,
Correct,
especially with
correct,
kids.
correct. You're right,
It's like
you're right.
very difficult.
you're not allowed to talk about things that you're not allowed to do on Shabbat. That's true.
Yes, so it's very
But
difficult to do
it's
this.
important for you to be aware, for mitzvah purposes, even things you're not allowed to do on Shabbat, you would be allowed to speak about. Understand? If it's for the purpose of a mitzvah and it's a muktzah thing, you could still talk about it.
Oh, okay.
Understand? Okay. That's what I was trying to say before. Okay, good. So now, like we said, even though you may have written in a way that is not going to last, it's still prohibited rabbinically. So let's say, just a wild example, somebody takes a pen and writes down a word on a piece of lettuce. Okay? It's obviously a very weird thing to do. It's very strange. And the piece of lettuce is not going to last. The writing there is not going to last. So therefore, it's only going to be prohibited rabbinically, but prohibited nonetheless. So you should not do that. Let's talk about other types of things that are a little more common. Let's say you want to write a name on a birthday cake. Mazal Tov, so-and-so, right? Happy birthday, so-and-so. You can't do that. Even though it's not going to last, it's going to be eaten up by the end of the day. But you're writing a letter on a birthday cake, you can't do that. You should not make any kind of images on the birthday cake. Circles, triangles,
What if
flowers.
you have like a stick
What?
that says happy birthday and you put it in?
It's already written. That's okay. I'm talking about creating circles, triangles, flowers with your icing. That you should not do either. You could put a border on a cake. You know, like you have a nice cake and you just want to put like a border of icing all around it. You could even use that tool. What's it called? You know those things. It's called a piper.
Piping? Yeah,
Yeah,
it's a
and
pipe.
you want to put the icing all around like that. Okay, no problem. You could do that, but don't make it into any kinds of images, shapes, etc. Okay.
Shape if you go around the icing,
It's just it's
not a design.
It's not a design. That's my point. It's not a nice flower or something like that.
But piping wouldn't be like muksa.
I saw it brought down that it's okay. Okay. Also, number 5, you cannot make letters out of liquids. Shulchan Aruch says if you have, let's say, fruit juice on the table, and I guess it's spilled or something, and you want to make it into a particular shape, you can't do that either. However, the Ramah does say in Siman Shin Mem Sif Daled that if a person wants to air write, like going, hi, or write something in the air like this, that's not it.
There's a game like I this cousin when I was little, we would like write something in the back on someone's back. Not really writing, this is your finger. You have to guess what you're writing, and that's not us, right?
That's great. That actually feels great when they write on your back. Yeah, I'm guessing letters and stuff. That's okay. That's like air
guessing
writing.
what you're writing.
No problem. That's great. Excellent. Okay, number 6. Okay. Writing with a shinui is only rabbinic as well. So for example, if I'm a righty and I write with my left hand, so I'm not allowed to write anything with my left hand, but remember that it's only rabbinic. It's only prohibited midrabanan. Now again, we're going to talk shortly about why that matters. If it's forbidden, it's forbidden. True. But there are going to be times.
Rabbinic.
Yeah, but it's forbidden rabbinically. Okay. So any way that you write in a weird way, if you're a lefty, you write with your right hand. If you're a righty and you write with your left hand. If you write with your mouth, if you write with your feet, right? These are all weird things, but they would be prohibited nevertheless rabbinically. But I'll tell you where it does make a difference. There are times where there is a great need. Let's say, for example, somebody needs a prescription. They go to the doctor down the block, say, "Doctor, I need help. I've got this and this problem. God forbid the person has an infection. God forbid something could spread, whatever it may be." So if there's a great need like that, especially according to the opinion that says that if you write in English or any other language that's not Hebrew, you are allowed to, it's not allowed to be done, but it's only prohibited rabbinically. So if a person goes ahead and needs the doctor to write him a prescription so that he could go to the pharmacy and then get whatever he needs, so that would be permissible for the doctor, but we would tell the doctor, "Doctor, you need to do it with your weaker hand," right? Do it with your weaker hand. Now it's gonna matter what the issue is. Meaning if it's an issue that is not really a big deal, he can't fill out a prescription for that purpose. But let's say that it's something that, God forbid, we would call sakanat ever. Sakanat ever means that if he doesn't get this medicine right now, the person is at risk of losing a functioning part of his body. That's no good. Even I would say something like a UTI, Shem Yishmo. That's a serious thing. If somebody has cellulitis, God forbid, that could spread. It's a serious thing. So you would need the doctor to go ahead and write a prescription for that. So the doctor would be allowed to do so, but he should do so A, in English, B, in a weaker way of doing it. No, let's say he's a righty, use your left hand. You're a lefty, use your right hand. Right? Do it in a way that would only be rabbinically prohibited, because the rabbis allowed doing rabbinically prohibited things for the purpose of saving somebody's ever, which means a body part that may be, God forbid, at risk. So sometimes things like that are serious. Okay.
Ever with Aleph or nine?
Aleph bet resh, ever. Very cool.
What is
Freezing?
ever?
And it goes off. It's okay.
Sure.
Danger of
Okay.
what was it called? Danger of.
Sakanat ever.
No, I know.
Danger of losing a body part, losing a limb.
Sakanat ever?
Yeah. You're allowed to do any kind of, for any person, God forbid, that is in distress. Not God forbid, he's a sick person. Not, the word is not distress. The word is he's sick and he's ill and cannot function properly. He's in bed, let's say, he's knocked out. You're allowed to do for such a person, it's called chole she'en bo sakana, a sick person that is not in danger of losing his life. You're allowed to do any kind of rabbinic violation, even you yourself, as long as you do it with a shinui. Shinui means you do it in a weird way. So if you can come up with a rabbinic violation that even when you do it in a normal way, it's only asur midrabanan. If you do it b'shinui, then even you yourself could do it for a person who is sick and cannot function normally. So for example, let's say somebody is having shortness of breath. He can't function normally. He needs some air right now. He can't function normally, right? So what do you do for this guy? So if, let's say, there's a fan on in the room, you would be allowed to knock the fan on with your elbow, because turning the fan on in the first place, according to many poskim, is only rabbinic violation. So you're allowed to do that rabbinic violation if you do so in a shinui, in a weird way, to help who? To help a chole she'en bo sakana.
What if someone's a doctor?
1 second, a sick person who is not in danger of losing his life, right?
What?
So this guy probably is going to be fine, but he can't function normally right now. So you would be allowed to do the rabbinically prohibited isur as long as you do it b'shinui. Okay, what's your question?
What if you have a doctor with you? Can they take care of you if they could help you with your health? Do they need
Okay, so-
shinuis?
Yeah, the rules are the same for everybody.
Oh, for everyone?
Yeah.
I thought if someone is a doctor, it's different.
Well, there are certain leniencies that we give this doctor, that he can drive and he can do things to go and treat a patient because it's saving a life. For the purposes of saving a life, he could do whatever he needs to do. But if he's not saving a life, then he's in the same boat as all of us.
Is it fine to non-Jews also? The correct message? Not for doctors, but in general.
What do you mean?
I feel like that was a question, but let's say you see some like a guy, you're allowed to break Shabbat to save his life, right?
We do. 1 second. 1 second. Let's continue. 1 second. Okay, let's go. If a person in the same way needs to go to the hospital for some reason, God forbid, and he needs treatment, then they won't give it to him until he signs certain documents, stuff like that, right? But again, you should do it if you are forced to sign the documents, do it with the weaker hand. That way, even though you're doing it, which obviously we don't want to do it on Shabbat, but if it's if you have no choice, then you do it with the hand that would be a shinui. Shinui means a deviation from the usual way, and therefore it would be permissible. Again, obviously because of the situation, not in general. You can't just say, "Oh, I'll sign it because it's my left hand." It doesn't work that way, right? It's only if, God forbid, it's like a pikuach nefesh situation. You have to sign it for treatment, okay? So then do it, but try and do it with a weaker hand. Okay. Also, if you stamp something with you let's say you have a stamp that signs your name, that's also considered writing. If, let's say, you have to sign something, you have to sign something right away, right? So then, if it's a great need, you would be able to ask a goy to do it, and ask the goy to do it with his weaker hand. So that the goy himself is also doing it in a weird way. So it's you asking a goy that's D'Rabbanan, and the melacha that he's doing itself is D'Rabbanan because he's using the weaker hand. Okay. Similarly, God forbid a person is in the hospital, they want to do x-rays on him, they want to do an MRI. So if it's pikuach nefesh, again, if he has to save his life, then there's no question, you do whatever you have to do to save a person's life. But if it's not pikuach nefesh, then okay, hold on one second. I'm getting this. Somebody keeps on calling me over here. We're learning for Tal Shalom, Tal Shalom, Ohev Shalom. May you have a refuah shlema b'toch shar cholei Yisrael. Amen. Okay, sorry. Somebody just kept on calling. Okay. For his refuah shlema. Okay. So again, if it's not pikuach nefesh, then the idea that you are putting yourself in the position that they should take an MRI of you or an X-ray of you on Shabbat, that is not the right time to do it. It should be pushed off till after Shabbat. Unless, God forbid, again, they're afraid. If there's even a concern, remember this for the rest of your life, if there's even a concern, maybe this is life-threatening, if there's even a chance that this might be life-threatening, there's no question you do it, without a shadow of a doubt. Over here, we're talking about something we know is not, and they just want to do it because they have the time now, whatever, push it off. You should not allow yourself to be, to put yourself in the position that they take the MRI on Shabbat. What about walking by a camera on Shabbat when you know that you're going to be recorded? Right? You know that you're going to be, basically your face or your body is appearing now on a screen in some security room somewhere and they're watching. So is that considered to be you doing an act of writing right now? Because you are creating an image on a screen right now, right? That's one question. And the other part of that question is if they're recording you, so you might not be creating an image on a screen, but there is some memory somewhere of you now in this thing. So I saw poskim say that technically speaking, it is permissible to walk in a place that has a security camera that records everything, like a Kotev or a shul with a security camera or a Ring doorbell, right? These doorbells now, they record everything, right? Always recording. The reason that it's okay is because the person gains absolutely nothing by the recording that is being done. And while it is true that it's a psik that it's going to happen, and as you remember, we learned what's psik guys, who remembers?
You can't cut off the head of the chicken without knowing that this would happen.
Without it dying, right? Exactly.
Without it
You can't claim, well, I didn't know, I had no idea that it was going to die when you were literally going and killing it, right? Well, I didn't mean to. All I wanted was its head, right? The idea is that the enomit kaven, when you say that, well, I did not have it in mind, and therefore it should be permissible. That rule only goes as far as, well, if you didn't necessarily know it's going to happen, we accept that. But if you knew for a fact it's going to happen, it's asur. So over here you're saying, well, I'm just walking at the kotel. Yeah, but you know you're getting recorded, so it should be asur. What do we say back to that? The answer is, yeah, but it's lo nichale. It's something that I could care less about. I don't need the recording. I'm not interested in the recording. I'm not sure. You can't claim that I wanted this recording. It doesn't do anything for me. It doesn't do anything for me that there's a screen over there. It does not interest me. So that'll be a psik lo nichale on something that is only a problem rabbinically, because this type of writing is only forbidden rabbinically. It comes, it goes. It's not really visible. It's not what we would call writing min Torah, and that's the reason that it would be okay. You're allowed to go in front of the camera, even though you know that the cameras are on, and even though you know that there are people in the security room watching. It's not considered that you're doing something asur. Okay. What about this interesting kind of thermometer that is, I don't know, I've never really seen it, I don't think, but it's a thermometer you put on the person's head, and then there's writing that comes up. It's like a strip of metal or something. Have you ever seen this?
I never.
You've seen this?
Yeah.
What does it say? It gives you a number?
Yeah.
It gives you numbers. Wow. So can you use that on Shabbat or not? Interesting, right? So over here, is that considered to be writing or not? So what I saw over here is that since you want the writing over here, you're specifically looking to try and see the writing, so it's only going to be forbidden rabbinically because it fades away. But for that moment, you're considered to be writing on Shabbat. So therefore, you can't use that one. Better to use the classic mercury thermometer that will just kind of rise up and show you the temperature. Okay. And like we said already in the past, one is not supposed to record himself on a tape recorder or any recorder for that matter, because that's also, to a certain extent, like writing. Okay. A person has on the sole of his shoes something that says Nike or Reebok or whatever, and as he walks outside, he steps on the mud and makes a big imprint on the ground, and it says the word Nike, right? Is that considered to be writing or not? The answer again to that is, it's true, while you may know that that will happen, but that writing is of no significance to you, and it's going to get washed away anyway. So again, it would be a psik reisha de lo nichale on actually terei de rabbanan, and therefore it's okay. Remember, guys, when I say these words, does it ring a bell? Psik reisha de lo nichale. He doesn't need that writing on the ground. And why is it only a rabbinic violation? Even if you would actually intend to do it, this stuff is getting washed away in a day or two. So therefore, it's not a problem midoraita at all. So we would allow you to do it when you don't intend to do it. Again, if you do intend to write, that's a different issue. So you can't do that. Okay. You are allowed to fold the corner of a page to remember your spots, even though when you kind of unfold it, there's a little bit of a mark left over, but you did not intend to leave a mark. You were just trying to remember where you are up to. And then when you undo it, the mark goes away. So therefore, folding the corner of the page is not considered to be a problem. Okay. Now, letters that are already written. Let's talk about bananagrams. You guys know bananagrams?
Yeah.
Yeah? Okay. Making the words with the...
And they have it in Hebrew too.
That's nice. I didn't know that. Okay. So bananagrams are letters, and I guess the idea of the game is to try and make words with the letters. Is that considered writing? The answer is, the Gemara tells us that to simply bring already written letters together is not a problem of writing. Simply bring them close to one another is not considered to be a problem of writing whatsoever. When you, however, attach them together and you keep them together, like you pin them onto something so that they stay together, that, according to many, is already considered to be a problem. So if, let's say, somebody takes those very same letters and kind of attaches them through some method to maybe a piece of cloth or something, he pins them together.
If you
So
glue it or
glue or pinning. So then you have another issue of also of tofer, like we learned in the past, of sewing. But besides for that, once you attach them in a way that they do not detach anymore, so then that would be considered writing on a Torah level. So long as you are just bringing them close and taking them away, then that's not going to be a problem. So I could bring them together, I could take them away from each other. Yeah.
So like the big beads on a bracelet that's spelled like a name or something, we can't put them together.
So in other words, you want to actually make the bracelet on Shabbat?
Like fix it, the letter fall out or.
Okay,
that's
so
a good
that,
question.
so the beads on the bracelet that have the letters on it. So if you, well, first of all, they're probably tied, aren't they?
I think this meant like a tie. The kids ones, they open and they want you to put them.
Okay, that's a great question. So
That's a great question.
it's missing a letter.
Like they falls apart, like the tie opens and then the
Okay.
beads fall out. Can you do that for me?
Ooh, okay, so the tie opened up, the beads all fell out, and you want to put it back. Okay, great question. So there are a bunch of issues that are now going on. Beads are not any kind of stone, are they? They're not like any kind of natural, just kind of plastic,
Yeah.
whatever. Okay, fine. The problem you're going to have now is a different problem. The problem you're going to have now is a problem of making a vessel. because until this moment, it was a vessel. Now they're all spilled everywhere. They're all over the place. So by you now putting them back together, so you are actually creating probably a new vessel all over again. So that would be an issue of the vessel making. To bring another letter into that, would that be considered writing? I don't know, because I don't think they're all attached. Are they being attached right now, or are they just kind of sliding?
Sliding.
It's kind of sliding. So I don't know if that would fall into the category of writing like we're talking about. This is referring to like if you pin them to something to the point where they're kind of staying there. Now, even that, I said before, it would be a Torah level. It could be it's not a Torah level, because what's happening is the letters are already written. You're just bringing them close together and leaving them there. But the point is that if you're pinning them down so that they cannot move and they are now stuck together as one,
On the
that
string,
is considered to be
on the
a
string,
problem.
they're permanent.
What?
On the string, like if you have the letters on the string,
They're permanent?
it's,
I mean, I don't know. I would think anyway it's a problem of tikkun of tikkun kli, fixing a vessel. But at any rate, so let's just be clear. Bananagrams that you're simply bringing letters close to each other. I would say the same thing for a Scrabble board game, right? Scrabble, you're not pinning the letters to the board, right? Right, you're just putting them on, right? So that would not be a problem, because just bringing letters together is not considered to be a problem on Shabbat if they are already written. Yes.
Sorry, like about my question before, like I didn't mean like an obvious emergency where like they have to go to the hospital and they're gonna like die or something, or close dying.
Yeah.
Like I meant like a preventative thing, like what you said before. What would we call it, a second or something like that?
Yeah.
So like let's say someone's like made or something. It's not like an obvious emergency, it's like life and death, but like they can
So you try to get him
like,
help.
prevent it
Try
or
to get him
something.
help.
You know what I
Try
mean? Like
figure out a way
it
to
could
get
be
him
a
help.
problem, but it's not like right now. Like you know
So
what
you
I
try
mean?
to get the guy help. Figure out a way.
Right.
See somebody passing by,
Or,
tell
like,
him call
asking for it.
911. You know, figure something out.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? You
You
try.
can't violate Shabbat,
What?
but you can't violate Shabbat.
Not in that case.
Unless they're like really.
Not.
But even if a boy is dying,
Then you
But-
figure out. You
no.
figure something out.
and then you
You-
there's a medical
Yeah.
halacha book, this.
You figure something out.
I
No,
don't.
no, you got to figure something out, because you have to remember something. Let's say Hatzalah, right?
Mhm.
Will absolutely go for a goy. They must, because if they don't, they could lose their license and they could
But it's a
lose their.
medical, what's the halacha?
Yeah, no, that's the point. That is the halacha, because if you, in other words, if you are risking animosity between us and the goyim, and God forbid causing riots like in Crown Heights in the 90s, you know what I'm saying? You know, that's not something we want. That's also pikuach nefesh, by causing them to be upset at us and hate us.
We
Yeah,
got into the biggest fight with our with the rabbi,
yeah,
and he gave us like a whole like metaphor about how this couple, this Jewish couple, saved a non-Jewish baby's life, and the baby ended up being Hitler, and like gave us this whole PTSD about like, you understand now, like they can't do mitzvah, and we were all like, oh my gosh, this is so not okay. And then this week I read it in my medical halacha thing about like basically pikuach hanefesh, and like
It doesn't.
let's leave this for a little bit later.
After the
Yeah, let's do it for a little bit later, and Zasha we'll get back to it, but yeah. Okay, excellent. So now, no, it's very important to talk about. Okay, now. So again, so the bananagrams are okay. The Scrabble is okay, because again, you're simply bringing letters together. I'll tell you where the big question is. The big question amongst the poskim is, what if you're splitting letters in half? That's the big question. Everybody is struggling with this issue.
What about cake?
1 second, we'll get there. Splitting letters in half. Let's talk about, for example, a Gap sweatshirt, where it says Gap over here, and the zipper is in the middle, and you zip it up, and you just made an A, and you open it, and you just split the A in the middle. Is that going to be a problem or not? So we just learned that bringing letters close to one another on Shabbat is not a problem, right? As long as you're not pinning them together and keeping them stuck together, you're okay. But the poskim struggle with this question. When you have a letter that you're splitting in half, is that considered to be a problem or not? Is that considered to be erasing, or is that considered to be writing? Again, now in this particular case, we're talking about something that's constantly meant to be open and closed, again and again, zipped and unzipped, etc., etc. So is that a problem of writing or not? And the answer is, it is a machloket haposkim. It is a big argument. It is a big argument amongst the authorities. The Rama famously held that it is not considered a problem, and one of the Mefarshim, I believe it was the Prisha, gave an explanation. He held that it is considered to be just like a door that opens and closes. In other words, if I open up this door over here in the corner, would that be considered destroying a building? By the same token, if I shut the door, is that considered to have built part of the structure?
No.
And the answer is no. Why? Because the door is meant to be open and closed, open and closed. So it's always there. It's just, this is how you use it. So I'm not building and I'm not destroying. It's just a door that's there. That's how you use it. You open it, you close it. That is one approach. And that's the approach of the Rama. The Rama says this by a book that has letters. Let's say somebody wrote his name on the side of the book. So over here is a book, right? You got this book. And this guy wrote over here, Moshe. Boom, right? So that's his name, Moshe. Now when he opens up the book, so now it's half of his name, and you close it, open it, etc. The Rama held no problem. He says technically it's not an issue. You know why? Because that's how it's meant to be used. That's how it's meant to be. It's not erasing it. It's not writing it. It's just always there. It's just not an issue. So therefore, the Rama felt that as far as the strict letter of the law is concerned, it is permissible. However, others argued on the Rama. Taz, again, Avraham, they felt that to break a letter in half is not the same thing as simply bringing letters close to each other. And therefore, in their opinion, it's a problem to do so. So where do we stand on this? So the answer is that ideally, if you can avoid breaking letters, you should avoid breaking letters. Try not to break letters. Try not to bring letters together if they're split in half. That's the idea. So for example, if let's say a person has let's say there's a rip in the page. He's got a page of the Siddur, and there's a rip in the page. So the strict letter of the law would be, according to the Rama, according to those who follow the Rama, there's no problem to put it back together, even if there's a rip in the letters themselves. Like we said, the A is getting split in half by the gap sweater. The Rama held no problem, and you should know Chacham Vadia held that is the halacha. It's not a problem. Technically, you're allowed to do it. No issue. You could put that piece of folded paper right back in its place, and there's no problem.
So what's
What?
no problem? What is
In other words, here's a piece of paper from a book, it's torn, right? Now, if you put the torn piece back, right, again, it's still somewhat attached, so it's not like it didn't get removed from the book, it's just like ripped a little bit, and now you fold it back onto its place. So is that considered writing? Because now you brought those letters together?
Why would it be considered writing?
Because now there was no, over here, right now, if I rip this paper,
Oh, you're bringing
like
it
that,
back together?
I'm bringing it back together.
But
you
you're not
understand?
gluing it.
I'm not gluing it, but so that
So
definitely
it's not
you can't do.
permanent.
That definitely you cannot do. But at
You're
the
not
same time,
taping
when
it.
I bring it back together, I'm showing you now that I have a full letter over here.
But it's not
So-
permanent.
Okay, but it still should be something forbidden midrabanan at least, right? So came along the Rama and said, no problem. And Chacham Vadia agrees with that opinion. However, I want you to know that there are those that are more machmir, and therefore, ideally, if you can avoid breaking a whole letter or bringing back a whole letter, that would be ideal, so that you avoid the question totally.
So this is the same idea as, with the paper, it's the same idea as the gap sweater. It's the
Yeah,
same thing.
exactly.
So everybody says that that's okay.
It would be totally fine.
For others.
According to Chacham Vadia, it would be a-okay. According to others, it would be a problem. Okay. So it's important to be aware of this point. So let's talk about puzzles on Shabbat, right?
That's a
So everybody talks about puzzles. And the idea that's brought down is that puzzles really, according to everybody, should not be played with by adults on Shabbat. Really, according to virtually everybody. Now, the main concern is by an adult puzzle, one of those 500-piece puzzles. You work hard in it. I don't know about you. I've seen people frame their puzzles. Have you seen people frame their puzzles? You frame them. There you go. Right? Yeah. So listen, it's an accomplishment. I can't even do the 15-piece puzzle. You know what I'm saying? It's a serious thing. So you worked hard on it. You put it up in a frame and you keep, look, I did this, I made this. So therefore, they say, without a question, that's called making an image. That would be a form of Kotev. Especially you're going ahead and you're keeping it there permanently, there's no question that would be a problem. So according to most poskim, what I saw as well, brought down by the Sephardic poskim, that kids could play with puzzles if they haven't reached the age of chinuch, they haven't reached the age of training and mitzvot, but adults really should not be playing with puzzles on Shabbat. Okay.
What if the kids ask you for help? Like, can you help me? Can you play with me? And there's no other kids around, so
So if it's one of those big wooden puzzles that they don't really
for
stick
babies.
together, yeah, that's not a problem.
Is it
But if it's
muktzah to
actually-
touch it?
Most of the time.
There's also some books that are like, when you read them, they're also individual puzzles.
Okay.
Like I'm saying, like you have like stories, and then inside the book,
There's a puzzle for the story.
each page has a puzzle.
Oh, interesting. Okay.
Yeah. Even Shabbat stories.
They have
Like
puzzle.
Yosef Mokir's Shabbat.
Has a puzzle in it?
Yeah, it has a puzzle in it. Like they-
Interesting.
Yeah, so
I hear.
it's, you can't do that.
No, you shouldn't do a puzzle on Shabbat. Okay. This also comes up sometimes, believe it or not, some our own Kodeshes, the Echal, where they keep the Torah, many of them have verses of Tanakh on them. And sometimes the letter gets split in the middle when you open up the doors. So that's the same question. So according to some, that would be asur. According to others, that would be permissible. Okay. So we spoke about the page that was ripped. Okay. We definitely would not be allowed to glue it together or tape it together. That would be something that we would try to stay away from. Regarding letters and stuff like that on cakes and eating biscuits and things that have letters on them and erasing them, that really is more of a question for mochek, erasing, but while we're on the subject, might as well talk about it now. The idea is the following. According to all poskim, if you are eating into something that has letters on it, and the way that you are getting rid of those letters is by eating, according to everybody, you're good. There's no problem to eat, let's say a birthday cake that says, let's say a cupcake. The cupcake has on it, happy birthday, and you bite into the happy birthday, you're erasing through eating, you're good.
Eating is always,
That's not considered to be an act of erasing. The question that the poskim deal with is, what about when you slice into a cake that has letters? Is that considered to be an act of erasing or not? So over here, once again, we have an important machloket poskim, but the main idea is that this writing to begin with was not a writing that was meant to last. And therefore, even if I write it with the intention of writing it, and even if I erase it with the intention of erasing it, to begin with, it's at most rabbinically prohibited. Now, when I take a slice of that cake with my knife, I cut it out, and I give you a slice of the cake, did I have in mind to erase a letter? My intention was not to erase a letter. My intention was to simply give you a slice of cake. Now, the result of that was that a letter was erased, right? But that was definitely not my intention, right? So for that reason, we say it's a psik resha. Now, do I need the erasing? Am I interested in the erasing? You say, no, it's a psik resha de lo nichale. It's a psik resha that I don't care about. On something that to begin with is only prohibited rabbinically. So therefore, the famous Dagul Merabava, the Noda Yehuda, which Chacham Badia quotes, says that you are allowed to slice into that cake. The same thing applies to anything that has any kind of wrapper. For example, the tea wrapper. Let's say you open up the tea and you're tearing through letters. You're opening up a bag of something and you're ripping open letters. Are you erasing now? So according to this way of thinking, which again, I am definitely going to rip these letters. But were they meant to last? Well, not really. They're going to go into some of them might. The cake definitely was not meant to, but maybe some of the wrappings were. So therefore, maybe that's more of an issue. But if you're definitely trying to avoid it, according to all opinions, it would be okay. And I'll tell you what I'm talking about. Yeah, let's take a look. Okay. Here's my sadaf. Okay. Lots of writing. No question, if I go like this, I will be splitting these in the middle, right? Boom. There goes the sadaf, right? Now, on the other hand, here on the other side, if let's say I open it like this, let's say I need a new tea bag, but if let's say I do this on Shabbat, let's say I go down this way, right? And I try to avoid opening the letters, so then technically I'm avoiding the whole issue because I don't have any issue. So that would be the best thing to do. Try to avoid opening letters. Now, let's say that it doesn't work out for you and it ends up cutting into the letters. Okay, but it wasn't a psik reisha. I didn't do it in a way that was definitely going to happen. Therefore, you saved yourself.
But I thought when it
Understand?
comes to eating, we're all like lenient. Because like there's potato chip bags, there's all these things. Like
Yeah, but
granola
so now you
bars.
have a separate issue. Now you have an issue of, am I erasing? So over here, it's a little different than the cake. By the cake, I was telling you, look, is the cake meant to last? Are the letters on the cake meant to last? Not really. So that's a little bit more of a lenient thing, because to begin with, it's only the Rabbanat. So if I don't have in mind to erase it and it's not meant to last anyway, we say, okay, cut the cake, no problem. Again, even there, if you can avoid it, it's better. But the bottom line is that if push comes to shove, no problem. This is a little bit worse, because this is actually meant to last. Now that I'm thinking about it, look,
Why? You're throwing it in the garbage.
yeah, but still, it's a solid writing. So it's a little bit more of an erasing than the other one. So therefore, you try to avoid it by cutting around. I remember a good dear friend of ours, Mr. David Mintz, who was the owner of Tofudi. You know Tofudi Cuties?
Mhm.
So he used to have a wrapper that around the Tofudi Cuties that was very hard to open up, and he got a lot of complaints that people can't open it on Shabbat because they're ripping the letters. So he redesigned the packaging so that it was Shabbat friendly, that you should be able to open it without having to tear letters on Shabbat. So that would be the best thing. If you can avoid tearing the letters, that's great. Yeah.
So on Shabbat, are you allowed to open it through like perforation? You know how you do like a little slit on the side to open like a chips or whatever? Can you open it that way?
Is that a perforation? It's just like a spot that makes it easier.
Yeah, it says like.
Yeah,
tear
that's
here.
okay.
So that's
But I
better
thought
than cutting it.
perforations are not okay.
No, it's not perforation. It's just like a spot where they tell you
Yeah.
open it from here. It's not like
With
giving.
a tissue box.
No, not
It's different. It's different.
Food is always different.
Yeah.
So that's better than the letters.
Are you cutting through letters at that point? You're not.
Let's say if you're not.
Yeah.
So it's that perforation for like.
Well, no. The perforations are a problem when you're trying to create a specific measurement. Over here, you're not trying to create this. You're just trying to open it. So as long as you're not opening it through the letters, you save yourself. You're good. That would be better.
So like,
Yeah.
if you don't try to do it that way, it's usher, or it's just like,
No, you should. You should try to avoid cutting the letters.
some people aren't so good with their fingers.
Okay.
You know?
Again, as long as it's not a secret. Yes.
You could use a scissor.
Yeah.
What?
Yeah,
What?
Yeah.
Every time I do it, I feel that.
Right?
Sorry.
Again, why? Why? Because it's a
like
cleat.
Like I was raised not keeping, and a scissor was never allowed. Like in my house, you touch a scissor, even though we were watching TV, we can't. So now.
Well, it's interesting. Maybe in this, you know what? I take it back. In this particular case,
You can
it's
touch a
bringing,
scissor-
one second. In this particular case, it could be it's creating something a little bit better for you. So therefore, it's a problem. In the case that we talked about before, you're destroying, you're cutting something to.
Also, this one is to open it.
Yeah, it's not the same. It could be a little bit different. I'll get back to you on that. Okay. But in general, the answer is yes. You could use it. Again, it's muktzeh, but it's the kind of muktzeh that you could use if you need it for a permissible use. Correct. Okay. Let's see what time it is over here. All right, guys, we'll stop over here. Chazakim u'buchim. Thank you very much. B'ezrat Hashem. Is everybody here next week?
Yeah.
Okay, looking forward.
It's 3 weeks. Who's gonna go and